What's the price of a secret? For Michael Harrison, it was the ghost of his dead wife, Somi. He thought he'd paid that price every day for 22 years, living a life of quiet repentance. But the past doesn't just haunt you, it comes back to collect. When his illegitimate daughter, the one he'd hidden his entire life, walked into the same hospital where his wife had drawn her last breath, she came with an impossible request. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his forgiveness. She wanted the heart of his other grandchild. A heart that was for now still beating. The smell of a hospital is the smell of antiseptic and fear. 22 years ago, Michael Harrison had drowned in it. He stood in the hallway of the maternity ward at St. Jude's Hospital, staring at the cheerful pastel-colored wallpaper as if it were a personal insult. Inside room 304, his wife, Somi, was screaming. It was not the empowering shout of exertion he'd heard in their birthing classes. It was a raw, thin sound of terror. "Mr. Harrison," a nurse name tag Brenda, said, her voice tight. "The baby's heart rate is dropping. Dr. Evans is performing an emergency C-section. You need to wait out here." "But I promised her." Michael mumbled his own heart, a cold stone in his chest. "You can see her as soon as they're stable." He slid down the wall, his tuxedo pants wrinkling. They had been at a charity gala for his real estate firm when Somi's water broke. It was supposed to be a funny story they'd tell for years. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it. He knew who it was. It was always her. He squeezed his eyes shut, and the hospital's sterile white dissolved into the dim, bourbon-colored light of a hotel bar. Callie. Her laugh 2 octaves lower than Somi's, the way she'd touched his hand at a client dinner. The just one drink that turned into a 6-month-long inferno of deceit. He'd been weak, flattered by the attention of a woman 20 years his junior, and he had set his own life on fire. The affair had ended 3 weeks ago in that same hotel. "You have to tell her, Michael." Callie had insisted, her voice shaking. I can't do this alone." "Do what alone?" he'd asked, the blood draining from his face. "I'm pregnant, Michael. 20 weeks. He had looked at his beautiful young mistress, and for the first time he felt nothing but a cold, septic dread. His own wife, Somi, was 7 months pregnant at home, lovingly painting a nursery. "I'll give you anything," he'd whispered, pulling out his checkbook. "Anything. But you cannot destroy my family." Callie had looked at him, her eyes hardening into something he didn't recognize. "It's a little late for that, isn't it?" Now in the hospital corridor, the phone vibrated again. A text. "Michael, where are you? It's happening. My water just broke. I'm at St. Jude's." He stared at the screen, a silent scream building in his throat. "Callie, here, now." A sudden, terrifying silence fell over room 304. The screaming stopped. Then a new sound, a thin, tiny wail. The baby. The door burst open. Dr. Evans, his scrubs speckled with blood, looked at Michael with an exhaustion that went beyond physical. "You have a daughter, Michael. She's beautiful. 7 pounds. Relief washed over Michael, so potent it made him dizzy. "And Somi, is she okay?" Dr. Evans's face didn't change. That's when Michael knew. "We had a complication," the doctor said, his voice low. "Amniotic fluid embolism. It's rare. It's catastrophic. Her body went into shock. We tried. Michael, we did everything. She's hemorrhaging. We can't stop the bleeding." "What are you talking about?" Michael said, pushing off the wall. "No, I have to see her." He pushed past the doctor. The room was a war zone. Medical staff moved with frantic, grim purpose. Somi was pale, her eyes half open, her hand limp over the side of the gurney. A nurse was holding a small, swaddled bundle. "Somi!" Michael cried, grabbing her hand. It was cold. Her eyelids fluttered. She focused on him, a faint, agonizingly sweet smile touching her lips. "She's perfect," Somi whispered, her voice a dry rustle. "Our Lyra." "I'm here, baby. I'm here. You're okay." Michael lied, tears streaming down his face. "Promise me." Somi breathed, her grip impossibly weak. "Promise me. You'll always protect her. Always. Keep her safe." "I promise, Somi. I swear to you," he sobbed. "My sweet, sweet boy," she murmured, but her eyes weren't on him anymore. They were on the corner of the ceiling. A flat, continuous beep cut through the room. "She's coding! Get him out!" Michael was pulled screaming from the room as they descended on his wife with paddles. He was still standing in the hallway, his mind a howling void, when Dr. Evans emerged 10 minutes later, pulling off his mask. "I'm so sorry, Michael." Michael didn't hear him. He was staring at his phone. Another text from Callie. "Floor 2, room 212. I'm scared." In one wing of St. Jude's, his wife was dead. In another, his mistress was giving birth to his child. A nurse, Brenda, approached him softly, holding the bundle. "Mr. Harrison, your daughter, Lyra. She needs you." He took the baby. He looked into her tiny, scrunched-up face, so much like Somi's, and he felt the two halves of his life split apart. There was the life he would live, the grieving widower devoted to his daughter, and there was the secret he would bury. "I promise, Lyra," he whispered, kissing her forehead as his heart shattered into a million pieces. "I will always protect you." He made the same promise he'd just made to his dying wife, but this time it was a lie. He wasn't protecting her. He was protecting himself. He never went to room 212. He sent a lawyer. The next 22 years were a masterpiece of compartmentalization. Michael Harrison became a legend of sorts in his wealthy suburb of Bellevue, Washington. He was the tragic, noble father. He'd never remarried. His life, he told everyone, was devoted to two things: his firm Harrison Properties and his daughter Lyra. And Lyra was a sunbeam. She grew up with the shadow of her mother's sainthood and the full, undivided attention of her father. She was everything Somi had been: kind, bright, and trusting. She adored Michael. He was her hero, her confidant, the man who had sacrificed everything for her. Their home was a shrine to Somi. Photos of her lined the mantel, the hallways, the piano. Michael had kept her memory so perfectly preserved that Lyra felt she knew her. "You're so much like her," Michael would say, brushing the hair from Lyra's eyes. "You have her strength." On Lyra's 22nd birthday, she and her longtime boyfriend Ryan gathered with Michael at a celebratory dinner. "Dad," Lyra said, her eyes sparkling, "we have one more present for you." She and Ryan shared a look. Ryan placed his hand on Lyra's stomach. Michael's breath hitched. "No." "Yes," Lyra laughed. "You're going to be a grandpa?" Michael burst into tears, a raw, uncomplicated joy he hadn't felt since before Somi's death. He hugged them both, his mind reeling. A second chance, a grandson, a way to finally do it right. The ghosts of St. Jude's felt for a moment like they were fading. 5 miles away, in a cramped apartment in Renton, another 22nd birthday had just passed. There was no celebratory dinner. Ava knelt on the floor of her apartment, sorting mail. She was a different kind of beautiful than Lyra. Where Lyra was soft sunshine, Ava was sharp, electric moonlight. She had her father's dark, intense eyes, and her mother's defiant chin. "Another one, Mom," Ava called out, holding up a pale gray envelope. It was from a law firm, Prentice and Associates. It arrived on the 15th of every month like clockwork. Her mother, Callie, walked out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Callie's youthful beauty had hardened into a brittle, wary pragmatism. She'd spent 2 decades waitressing at the same diner, fueled by caffeine and resentment. "Well, open it," Callie said, lighting a cigarette. Ava tore it open. A check, the same amount it had always been. "Hush money," Ava muttered. "It's child support," Callie snapped. "It paid for this roof. It paid for your community college." "It's guilt money," Ava shot back. "From a man who's never even spoken to me. Not once. Not a card, not a call." "It was the arrangement," Callie said, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. "I took the money. He took the high road." Ava had known about Michael Harrison her whole life. Callie had never hidden the truth. She'd weaponized it. She'd shown Ava the pictures from society magazines. "See that? That's your father. That's Harrison Tower in downtown Seattle. He built that. See her, that's Lyra, your sister. The real one. The one who got the inheritance and the perfect life." Ava stood up, the check clenched in her fist. "I don't want his money anymore." "Don't be stupid," Callie said. "I'm 22. He's done. He's paid his dues right." Ava's voice was laced with a bitterness she hated. "I saw her, you know. Lyra. At the mall last week. She just looked so light. Like nothing bad had ever touched her." "Don't," Callie warned. "Don't you go near them." "Why not? Am I his dirty secret forever?" Ava's eyes filled with hot, angry tears. "I'm pregnant, Mom." Callie's cigarette stopped halfway to her lips. "What with who that Jake, the one who can't hold a job?" "His name is Jake," Ava said defensively. "And he loves me, and we're going to be a family, a real one, not whatever this is." Callie stared at her daughter, the anger in her face suddenly collapsing into a deep, familiar sorrow. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "A baby doesn't fix things. A baby just makes everything harder." "Not for me," Ava said, defiant. "I'm going to do it right. My baby is going to know exactly who they are. And they are going to be loved." Ava threw the check on the table. She didn't know it, but 5 miles away, her half-sister Lyra was making the exact same promise. History doesn't just repeat itself. It rhymes. 8 months later, Michael found himself pacing the maternity ward of St. Jude's. The exact same ward. He'd tried to get Lyra to go anywhere else over Lake Swedish, but Lyra had insisted. "St. Jude's is the best," she'd said, oblivious. "And besides Dad, it's where I was born. It's where Mom, it's like she's here with us." Michael had felt a cold sweat break out on his neck. She's here with us. He hadn't been back in this building in over 2 decades, and the smell of antiseptic and fear hit him like a physical blow. But this time the outcome was different. After a blessedly uncomplicated labor, Lyra and Ryan's son was born. "Leo," Lyra whispered, her face streaked with happy tears as the nurse placed the baby on her chest. "Leo Michael Harrison." Michael held his grandson and the 22-year-old knot of guilt in his chest, finally uncoiled. He looked at the baby, then at Lyra, then at the empty corner of the room where he half expected to see Somi smiling. "He's perfect, Lil," Michael said, his voice thick. "Absolutely perfect." He'd gotten it right. The ghosts were gone. 2 floors down in the flickering, beeping twilight of the neonatal intensive care unit NICU, Ava was living a different story. Her daughter Maya had been born 6 days earlier, tiny and blue. Jake, her boyfriend, had been there for the birth. but the relentless beeping of the machines and the grave-faced doctors had sent him packing. He'd gone to get some air 2 days ago and hadn't come back. So Ava sat alone, next to an isolette, watching her daughter fight for every breath. Callie sat beside her, her usual brittle anger replaced by a quiet, simmering dread. The door swished open, and a man in a white coat, Dr. Eris, approached them, his face kind but professional. Ava. Mrs. Reynolds, can we talk in my office? In the small gray room, Dr. Eris put up an image of a heart. Maya was born with a severe congenital heart defect, hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Essentially, the left side of her heart is critically underdeveloped. It cannot pump blood to the body. But you can fix it, Ava asked, her voice small. We've been supporting her with medication, Dr. Eris said gently. But she's in heart failure. The surgeries for this condition are high risk, and frankly, Maya is not a good candidate. Her heart is too weak. So what are you saying? Callie demanded, her voice rising. I'm saying, Dr. Eris said, his eyes locking with Ava's, that her only option is a transplant. We've placed her at the top of the UNOS list, status 1A. She is our highest priority. But Ava, we are waiting for a heart from an infant donor, a baby who doesn't survive. Ava felt the blood leave her face. She was being told that for her baby to live, another baby had to die. How long? She whispered. We don't know. Days, weeks. She doesn't have months. Dr. Eris sighed. It's a terrible, terrible lottery. All we can do now is wait. And hope. Ava walked back to the NICU in a daze. She looked at Maya, her tiny chest rising and falling with the help of a ventilator. She thought of the father who had abandoned her. She thought of the other family, the rich, perfect family who lived in the sun while she and her mother lived in the shadows. She put her hand on the isolette. I will not let you die, she whispered, a fierce, primal vow. I will do anything. Leo was 3 months old. He was a colicky, beautiful, sleepless baby who had completely hijacked Lyra and Ryan's life, and they were deliriously happy. It was a Tuesday, a gray, drizzly Seattle afternoon. I'm going, Dad, Lyra called, struggling to buckle Leo into his top-of-the-line car seat. The new mom's support group, finally going to meet people who haven't slept in 3 months. Michael, who was working from home, came over and kissed Leo's head. He smells like milk, Michael smiled. Drive safe, sweetie. The roads are slick. I will, Lyra said, pulling her rain hood over her head. Love you. Love you more. Michael watched her back the minivan out of the driveway. He went to his home office, a photo of Somi on his desk, and poured a cup of coffee. He felt a profound, settled peace. His life was at last whole. 10 minutes later, his phone rang. It was Ryan. Michael! Ryan's voice was high-pitched, cracking. Michael, you need to... Oh, God! Ryan, slow down. What's wrong? It's Lyra. They were in an accident. A truck. He ran a red light. Michael, it's bad. They're at St. Jude's. You need to come now. The coffee mug slipped from Michael's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. St. Jude's. The words echoed in his head. No. Not again. Please, God, not again. He drove the 10 miles in a blind panic, his mind replaying a loop of Somi, of blood, of the flatlining beep. He ran through the sliding glass doors of the emergency department, the exact same doors he'd run through for Lyra's birth, the exact same doors he'd stumbled out of after Somi's death. A trauma nurse intercepted him. Family of Lyra Harrison. I'm her father, Michael Harrison. Where is she? Where is my grandson? "Your daughter is in surgery," the nurse said, her voice calm and practiced. "She has a compound fracture in her femur and a severe concussion, but her vitals are stable. She's going to be okay." Michael sagged against the wall. "Thank God. And Leo, the baby." The nurse's face tightened. That tiny, almost imperceptible shift that signals the end of the world. The baby was in the back. The impact it was on that side. He's in the pediatric ICU. Dr. Evans is with him." Dr. Evans. Michael's blood ran cold. It was the same doctor, the one who had delivered Lyra, the one who had pronounced Somi dead. Now a silver-haired, grim-faced chief of trauma, Dr. Evans, walked toward him, and Michael knew. He knew with the same bone-deep certainty he'd felt 22 years ago. "Michael," Dr. Evans said, his voice heavy with a history Michael could barely stand. "Don't," Michael whispered. "Please, don't." "Michael, we did everything we could. Leo, he arrived with no pulse. We were able to restart his heart, but he was without oxygen for too long. He sustained a catastrophic, irreversible brain injury. I've run every test. There is no brainstem activity. Michael, he's gone." "But his heart, you said you restarted it." "He's on full life support," Dr. Evans said, his eyes full of pity. "A ventilator is breathing for him. Medication is keeping his heart beating. But he is not in there. I am so sorry. As soon as your daughter is out of surgery, you'll need to decide when to withdraw support." Michael's legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair, the world dissolving into a high-pitched ringing. The promise he'd made to Somi, "I'll always protect her," rang in his ears. He had failed. He had failed Lyra. He had failed the grandson who was his second chance. The peace he'd felt an hour ago was a cruel joke. The ghosts of St. Jude's hadn't faded. They had just been waiting. In the NICU, Dr. Aris was reviewing Maya's deteriorating chart when his pager went off. An alert from the regional transplant network. Potential donor. O positive. 3 months. St. Jude's PICU. His heart leaped. In this hospital. He cross-referenced the file, the weight, the blood type, the tissue markers. It was a 1 in a million match. It was perfect. He rushed to the NICU waiting room, where Ava and Callie were trying to sleep in plastic chairs. "Ava," he said, and she was on her feet instantly. "We have a potential donor, here, in this hospital. The family, they've just lost their child. A transplant coordinator is going to speak with them shortly." Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Hope so sharp it was painful flooded her system. "Oh my God. Oh my God." "This is the first step," Dr. Aris cautioned. "The family has to consent, but this is a very good sign." Callie, ever the cynic, was already working the angles. She walked to the nurse's station. "That accident, the one on the news, was that the baby?" The nurse busy nodded. "The one from the truck collision. Awful. The mother's in surgery. The father's in the PICU waiting room. Just tragic." "What's the mother's name?" Callie asked, feigning idle sympathy. The nurse glanced at the chart. Lyra Harrison. Callie Harrison. The world tilted. She grabbed the edge of the counter. It couldn't be. She'd spent 2 decades tracking them. Michael's daughter. That Lyra. She grabbed Ava. "What's the father's name? Mom, what does it matter?" Ava said, her eyes wild with hope. "Ava, what is the father's name?" Ava, confused, went to the nurse. The family, the donor family. I want to pray for them. Do you know their name? The nurse, harried, said. The baby's grandfather is the contact, a Mr. Harrison, Michael Harrison. He's in the PICU waiting area 1 floor up. Ava didn't understand the look on her mother's face. It was a terrifying combination of shock horror and a dark, cold triumph. Mom, he's here, Callie whispered, her voice trembling. Your father. He's here. And his grandchild is the donor. What? Come on! Callie grabbed Ava's arm, dragging her toward the elevator. Mom, stop. We can't. Dr. Eris said we have to wait. We're not waiting, Callie hissed, jabbing the button. He owes us. That man owes us this! Michael was sitting in the sterile, silent PICU waiting room, his head in his hands, trying to build the words to tell Lyra that her son was dead. The elevator doors dinged. He heard footsteps. He looked up, his eyes blurred with grief. A woman was standing in front of him. A woman whose face he hadn't seen in person in 22 years, but who haunted his nightmares. Older, harder, but unmistakably her. Callie. His voice was a dead whisper. Hello, Michael, Callie said, her voice shaking with 2 decades of suppressed rage. What are you doing here? He was too shattered to even process the surreality of it. I'm here, Callie said, her voice rising, because my baby is dying. 2 floors down. My baby needs a heart. Michael just stared, uncomprehending. I don't, Callie gestured to the young, terrified woman beside her. Michael, this is Ava. Your daughter. Ava looked at Michael, this mythical, monstrous figure, from her childhood, now just a broken-looking old man. Is it true? She whispered. And Ava's baby, Maya, Callie continued her words like hammer blows, is in the NICU. She's dying, Michael. She needs a heart transplant. Today. The blood drained from Michael's face. He looked from Callie to Ava, then back to Callie. No, he breathed. Yes, Callie said, her eyes glinting with a terrible, desperate light. Dr. Eris just told us. There's a donor, a perfect match. Your other grandchild, the one in there. She pointed toward the PICU doors. You're not asking me for money this time, Michael? Callie said, her voice dropping to a raw, ragged plea. I'm not asking. I'm telling. You owe us this. You destroyed our lives. You let your daughter live in the sun while mine lived in the dirt. You owe her this life. You will give us that heart. The universe collapsed. Michael's secret life and his real life didn't just collide. They annihilated each other. His wife's promise, his hidden daughter, his dying granddaughter, his dead grandson, all in the same hospital, all on the same day. The sin he thought he'd buried had just climbed out of its grave, and it was demanding a blood sacrifice. Michael couldn't breathe. He was having a heart attack. He had to be. He looked at Callie, this ghost of his past, and at Ava, the living proof of his sin, and all he could feel was the crushing absolute weight of his failure. You don't know what you're asking, he stammered. I know exactly what I'm asking. Callie cried, attracting the attention of a nurse. I'm asking for my granddaughter's life, a life you owe me. Mrs. Reynolds, please. The nurse stepped forward. This is a private waiting area. You can't be here. He's the father, Callie yelled. Get out. Michael whispered, his voice dangerously low. Michael? I said get out. He stood up, his grief transmuting into a cold, protective rage he'd never known he possessed. This is not your decision. It is not my decision. You will not come here and do this. Not now. Ava, who had been silent, finally spoke. He's right, Mom. Let's go. This is wrong. She pulled Callie, who was now sobbing, back toward the elevator. Michael collapsed back into the chair. He was trapped. A moment later, a kind-looking woman in a blue blazer approached him. Mr. Harrison, my name is Mrs. Davis. I'm the transplant coordinator for the hospital. I know this is an unimaginable time, but I need to talk to you and your daughter about Leo. Michael just laughed. A dry, horrifying sound. You're too late, he said. They already found us. Mrs. Davis looked confused, but proceeded gently. Mr. Harrison, your grandson Leo is a potential candidate for organ donation. His heart, his liver, his kidneys. They could save multiple other children. I am so deeply sorry for your loss, but I have to ask, is this something your daughter and son-in-law would be willing to consider? Michael looked at her, the cosmic, cruel irony of it all pressing down on him. There's a baby in your NICU. Maya, she needs the heart, doesn't she? Mrs. Davis was visibly taken aback. That information is confidential. Our process is anonymous. Is she a match? Michael demanded. She is, Mrs. Davis said quietly. A perfect one. But Mr. Harrison, the decision cannot be directed. It's a gift to the general list, though given her status, she would be the recipient. So I just have to get my daughter to agree. The decision rests solely with Leo's parents, with Lyra and Ryan. The weight settled onto his shoulders. He had to go into his daughter's room, a daughter who had just survived a horrific crash, and he had to tell her two things: her son was dead, and the mistress's family he'd hidden from her entire life, needed her son's heart to live. He walked to Lyra's recovery room. Ryan was by her bed holding her hand. Her leg was in a complex framework of pins and metal. Her face was bruised, her eyes fluttering open. Dad, she mumbled, her voice thick with pain medication. Dad, where's Leo? I want to see Leo. Is he okay? Ryan looked at Michael, his eyes red and shattered. He couldn't speak. Michael felt his entire life balancing on the head of a pin. The promise to Somi. I'll always protect her. He'd always thought that meant protecting her from the truth. He saw now in this moment that the lie was the one thing that could destroy her. Ryan, Michael said, his voice stone. Can you give us a minute? Michael, she's not. Please, I have to do this. Ryan, looking lost, nodded and stepped into the hallway. Michael sat by Lyra's bed the same way he'd sat by Somi's. He took her hand. Lyra, baby, there was an accident. I know, the truck. But, Leo, where is he, Dad? Why won't anyone bring me my baby? A note of panic entered her voice. Lyra, Leo, he didn't make it. The words hung in the air. Lyra stared at him. What? No. No, don't say that. You're lying. He was in his car seat. It's the safest one, you bought it. No, his injuries they were too severe, baby. He's on life support, but he's gone. His brain, there's no activity. Lyra, Leo is gone. The scream that tore out of Lyra's throat was not a human sound. It was the sound of a soul being ripped in half. It was the sound of her mother. Nurses rushed in, but Michael held up a hand. Wait, please. Lyra sobbed a violent, body-racking grief, trying to sit up to get out of the bed. I want to see him. You're wrong. I want to see my baby. We will. Michael said, his own tears streaming. We will. But Lyra, there's something else. Something I have to tell you. Something I should have told you 22 years ago. What? She cried, her voice raw. What could possibly matter now, when When your mother and I were married," Michael began, his voice shaking. "Before you were born, I was not a good man. I was weak. I had an affair." Lyra stopped crying. She just stared at him, her grief-stricken face hardening into confusion. "What? Her name was Callie. It was a mistake. The biggest of my life. I ended it. But she was pregnant." Lyra's face went blank. "Dad, stop. Stop talking." "She was in this hospital, Lyra. The night you were born. The night your mother died. She had a daughter. A girl named Ava." "Stop," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "She's here. In this hospital. Ava. She's your half-sister. And she just had a baby, too. A little girl. And that baby, Lyra, that baby is dying. She's in the NICU, and she needs a heart." The silence in the room was absolute. Lyra's expression shifted from horror to a slow, dawning, sickening comprehension. "No. The doctors, they're asking about donation. Leo, he's a perfect match. His heart, it could save her baby." Lyra stared at her father. Her hero, the man who was her entire world. She saw him for the first time as he was. A liar. A weak, selfish man whose betrayal had framed her entire hollow life. The shrine he'd built to Somi wasn't a tribute. It was a cage. "So my whole life," Lyra said, her voice a dead, flat whisper, "has been a lie. Lyra, I was trying to protect you. To protect Somi's memory." "Protect me!" she shrieked, all the pain and grief and betrayal erupting. "You lied to me. You let me grow up in a house full of lies. You let my mother die and you had another child here in this building. Lyra, please. And now," she screamed, the monitors by her bed starting to beep wildly. "Now you come in here, you tell me my son is dead, and in the same breath you ask me to give his heart. To her. To the child of the woman who broke my mother's heart. It's not for her, Lyra. It's for the baby. An innocent baby. Get out!" Lyra roared, her voice breaking. "You're not my father. Get away from me. You let my mother die. You let my baby die. You've ruined everything. Get out!" She grabbed the plastic water pitcher from her bedside table and hurled it at him. It smashed against the wall as Ryan and the nurses burst in. "Get him out of here!" Lyra sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Michael. "I never want to see him again." Michael stumbled backward out of the room, past Ryan's accusing glare, past the pitying looks of the nurses. He slid down the wall in the hallway, the same wall he'd slid down 22 years ago, and put his head in his hands. He had lost everything. His wife, his son-in-law, his grandson, and now the one person he had left. He had finally truly lost Lyra. The hospital, once a place of hope and new life, had become a mausoleum. Each floor held a different circle of hell. On the third floor, Michael Harrison was a pariah. He sat on a cold plastic chair outside Lyra's room, barred from entry by his son-in-law. He could hear faintly the sound of her weeping, a sharp, gasping sound that was horrifyingly familiar. It was the sound Somi had made when her contractions became too much a sound of a body at its absolute limit. Now, it was the sound of a soul doing the same. He was trapped between two doors. He couldn't open the door to his daughter's room, and the door to the PICU, where his grandson's body lay, a silent, breathing machine. Inside the room, Ryan sat holding Lyra's hand. His own grief, a suffocating, silent rage. He had just watched his wife, bruised and broken, try to claw her way out of bed, screaming for a baby that was already gone. He had held her down, his own tears streaming as the reality settled over them like a shroud. His hatred for Michael in that moment was pure and perfect. That man with his quiet dignity and his bottomless bank account was a fraud. He had not just betrayed his wife. He had set this entire tragedy in motion, a line of dominoes that had taken 22 years to fall, landing squarely on his son. 2 floors down in the flickering twilight of the NICU, the alarms on Maya's monitor began to beep with a new frantic urgency. A nurse hurried over her face, grim, and began titrating a drip. "Her pressure is dropping," the nurse said to Callie, her voice low. "We're maxing out her dopamine. We need that heart, Mrs. Reynolds. We need it now." Callie's hands clenched into fists. "She's not going to do it," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "That girl, Lyra, she's just like him, selfish. She'll let this baby die just to spite us, just to keep everything for herself. She's a Harrison." Ava stared at her mother, and for the first time she felt nothing but a cold, desolate pity. Her mother's entire identity was this grievance. It was her fuel, her food, her entire world, and she was going to let it poison this too. "Mom, stop," Ava said, her voice hollow. "Just stop." "What?" "It's the truth." "No," Ava said, standing up, her legs shaking. "The truth is that a mother just like me is 1 floor up and her baby just died. The truth is this anger. It's what started all of this. It's not going to end it." "So what are you going to do?" Callie spat. "Sit here and let your baby die?" "No." Ava looked at her mother, her eyes clear and hard, reflecting the same defiant chin that Callie herself possessed. "I'm not you. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to demand. I'm not going to talk about what anybody owes me." She straightened her shirt. "I'm going to talk to her." "Ava, no." Callie grabbed her arm. "They'll have you arrested. She'll call security." "Then she'll call security," Ava said, pulling her arm free. "But she's going to hear my voice, not yours. She's going to see my face, mother to mother." Ava walked out of the NICU, past the gurneys and the hushed nurses, and got on the elevator. Each ding of the floor numbers was a hammer blow against her heart. She was terrified. She had no right. This was an invasion of the most sacred private grief. But as she stood there, she felt the small, terrifying weight of her daughter's life in her hands. Her daughter, who had no one. A father who had run a grandmother consumed by the past, and a biological grandfather who didn't know she existed until an hour ago. It was just her. She got off on the 3rd floor. She saw Ryan outside the door, his head pressed against the wall, his shoulders shaking. He was talking to the silver-haired Dr. Evans, who had a hand on his shoulder. We need more time," Ryan was pleading. "I know, son. Take the time you need," the doctor said, his voice heavy. Ava saw her chance. While they were distracted, she slipped past them, pushing open the heavy door to Lyra's room. Lyra was lying in the bed, her face a pale, bruised mask, her eyes staring at the ceiling, unblinking, as silent tears tracked into her hairline. The room was thick with the smell of painkillers and sorrow. "Lyra." Lyra's head snapped to the door. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, tried to focus. She saw a young woman, her dark hair pulled back, her face pale with exhaustion. A face she had never seen, but a face she recognized. She had her father's eyes. "You!" Lyra whispered the word, full of a loathing so profound it was almost physical. At the sound of her voice, Ryan burst back into the room, Dr. Evans behind him. "Lyra, who the hell are you?" Ryan roared, seeing Ava. "Get out, I said, get out, security. Please!" Ava held up her hands, backing against the wall. "Please, I'm not. My mom, She shouldn't have. I'm not her." "You're his daughter," Lyra said, her voice dead. "Yes." Ava's voice broke. "Yes, I am. And my daughter, she's dying. Downstairs. Right now." Ryan moved between Ava and the bed, a physical shield. "Are you insane?" he snarled, his grief making his voice a low, dangerous weapon. "You're coming in here now to ask us—" "No, Get out," Ryan said, jabbing a finger toward the door. "Or I will physically throw you out. My son is on a machine down the hall because of the lies your family is built on. Get out." "My family," Ava cried, the injustice of it all, her entire life of being the other erupting. "I don't have a family. I have a mother who hates the world, and a father I just met over the body of his grandson. I have nothing. And my baby, my daughter, she has nothing. She's just a baby. She's just a tiny little girl who is turning blue. She doesn't have a family. She just has a heart that's failing." Lyra stared. She had expected a monster, a grasping, demanding villain like Callie. She had expected someone to come in and demand a piece of her son. But this was just a girl her own age, her face a mirror of the same terror, the same exhaustion, the same all-consuming primal agony that was eating Lyra alive from the inside out. She's just a baby," Ava whispered again, her facade crumbling as she slid down the wall, mimicking Michael's posture from hours and decades before. "She didn't do anything. My Maya, she didn't do anything." Ava looked at Lyra, her eyes pleading not for a heart, but for understanding. "And your son, Leo, he didn't do anything either. They're the only two innocent ones in all of this. Our parents, they did this to us. They put us here, in this horrible room, in this horrible hospital. They made us this." Silence descended. Ryan was still tense, his fists clenched, but his anger was fractured by the raw, undeniable truth of Ava's grief. Lyra finally spoke, her voice a dry rasp. I saw his room before, the nursery. Ryan built the crib. I painted it. It's blue with little stars on the ceiling. Glow in the dark." Her voice hitched, and a fresh sob tore through her. I was so excited for him to see the stars." Ava, weeping silently against the wall, replied, Mine's pink, just a corner of my apartment. I can't go back there. Not if she's... I can't go home to an empty corner." The connection was made, not as sisters, not as family, but as two mothers trapped in the same impossible waking nightmare. Lyra looked at Ryan. His face was a ruin. He knew what she was thinking. He knew his wife. "Lyra," he choked out, shaking his head. "No, please, don't. We can't." "Why not?" she whispered. "Because he's ours." Ryan cried the word, tearing from his chest. "He's our baby, Lyra. He's all we have left. I can't let them cut him open and give the best part of him to them, to her." He motioned at Ava, his grief and anger warring with the pity he felt. "And what?" Lyra's voice grew stronger, pulling on a reserve of strength she didn't know she had. We let it stop. We let his beautiful, perfect heart just stop, like the rest of him. We We let him be. Just an accident. Just a tragedy. All that life, all that love, it just goes dark. She was crying hard now, not just for Leo, but for the sheer cosmic unfairness of it. I can't, Ryan. I won't. I won't let his life mean nothing. I won't let it be just a statistic. I need a part of him to go on. I need him to save someone. Don't you see? It's the only thing in this entire world that isn't pointless. She turned her gaze to Ava, who was watching her stunned. Is she a good baby? Lyra asked the question so surreal, so mundane, it hung in the air like a prayer. Ava, confused, stammered, "What? My Leo." Lyra's voice softened. He had colic. He cried. All the time. He kept us up. All night. But he had this grip. He'd hold my finger so tight. I can still feel it. She flexed her hand as if holding his. She can't cry. Ava whispered, the tears falling freely now. She's too weak. She doesn't have the strength. Her eyes. She just watches me, like she's asking me to fix it. Lyra looked at Ryan. He was weeping, his face in his hands, shaking his head. "It's the only way, Ryan," she whispered. "It's the only thing that makes sense." Ryan looked up. He looked at Ava, this stranger who was his wife's sister, this woman whose existence had just destroyed his world. He looked at his wife, her leg in a metal brace, her face bruised, her eyes clear for the first time in hours. And he knew she was right. It was the only way to make Leo's life and his death mean something more than just a red light and a lie. He gave a single, sharp, agonizing nod. Lyra took a shuddering breath. She looked at Ava. Get the coordinator, Mrs. Davis, the transplant lady." Ava scrambled to her feet. "Yes, okay, and Ava," Lyra said, her voice dropping suddenly cold as ice. Ava stopped. "Get my father. Tell him I want him here. I want him to see this. I want him to watch." The air in the room froze. This wasn't just a gift. It was a judgment. Minutes later, the room was full. Mrs. Davis stood by the bed, her face a mask of compassionate professionalism holding the consent forms. Ryan stood by Lyra, his hand on her shoulder. Ava stood in the corner near the door, a silent, terrified witness. And Michael Harrison stood in the doorway, his face ashen. He had been summoned by Ava, and he looked at the scene, his life's two realities finally horrifically merged. "Lyra," he began, his voice a dry croak. "Don't talk," Lyra commanded, her voice cutting through the room. She didn't look at him. She looked at the papers. "You wanted this. You wanted to fix your mistake. This is what it costs. You will stand there, and you will watch us. You will watch us sign the papers that give away our son's heart to her. This is your atonement, Dad. Not ours, yours. And it costs us Leo." Michael visibly crumbled, as if his bones had turned to dust. He gripped the doorframe, his punishment absolute. Lyra took the pen. Her hand shook. Ryan placed his hand over hers, and together they signed the line. The hours that followed were a blur of surreal, silent torment. The honor walk. The entire staff of the PICU and third floor lining the hallway, as Leo's isolette, still breathing, was wheeled toward the operating theater. Lyra in a wheelchair, and Ryan walking beside her, followed. 10 paces behind them, alone, walked Michael. And from the doors of the NICU, watching from a distance, were Ava and Callie. The entire broken, shattered family connected for the first and last time by this tiny, tragic procession. The wait. 6 hours. Michael, Ava, and Callie sat in the surgical waiting room on 3 different distant sides in total, suffocating silence. Lyra and Ryan were in her room, holding each other, having no words left to say. At 3:17 a.m., the door to the waiting room opened. Dr. Aris, his scrubs dotted with sweat, walked in. He went to Ava first. "It's done," he said, his voice thick with exhaustion. "The heart, Leo's heart, it's in. It's beating. It's beautiful. She's critical. But she's stable. She's a fighter. She has a chance. A real chance." Callie collapsed, her body finally surrendering to the relief. Ava just nodded, the tears she'd been holding back finally falling. "Thank you," she whispered. Dr. Aris then crossed the room to Michael. Michael looked up, a dead man. "Mr. Harrison," Dr. Aris said quietly. "The gift, it was accepted. The recipient is stable. Your family? What your daughter did, it's the most profound act of grace I've ever witnessed." Michael just nodded, the tears falling silently. "It wasn't me," he whispered. "It was Lyra. She's like her mother." Weeks later, Lyra was discharged. Ryan packed the still new car seat, the one Michael had bought them, the safest one on the market, into the trunk. Lyra saw it and had to be helped into the car, her body shaking. The drive home was silent. When they got to their house, Lyra stood in the doorway of the blue nursery, staring at the empty crib and the glow-in-the-dark stars. We can pack it up," Ryan offered, his voice gentle. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." Michael came 2 days later. He brought flowers. Lyra opened the door. She was on crutches, her face pale. "Lyra, please," he begged. Let me help. Let me do something." "Help," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "How you helped my mother. How you helped me, my whole life. Dad. It wasn't a life. It was a story you told, a neat, tidy story about a tragic widower and his perfect daughter. But it was a lie. Lyra, I was trying to protect you. You were protecting you," she cried, the first flash of feeling returning. "And I was your shield. You used my mother's memory as a shield to hide her, to hide your sin. And now my son is gone. And his heart, his living, beating heart, is in my sister's baby." She said the word sister like it was poison. "Do you have any idea what that feels like? To know that the only part of my son that's still warm is with them. Every time I think of him, I see her face, I see your face, I see your betrayal. I can't be your daughter right now. I have to figure out how to live. And you can't be in my life. Please, just go." She closed the door in his face. He stood there for a long time before walking away, a man who had everything and had lost it all. 6 months passed. The seasons turned. It was a bright, cold spring afternoon. Lyra was sitting on a park bench alone. Her crutches were gone, but she walked with a faint, permanent limp. She was throwing pieces of a bread roll to the ducks. She heard the sound of stroller wheels on the gravel path. She didn't look up, but her hand froze. The stroller stopped a few feet away. Ava stood there. Maya was in the stroller. She was bigger. Pink-cheeked, a small knitted cap on her head. She was awake, gurgling. She's beautiful, Lyra said, her voice quiet, still watching the ducks. The doctors, they say she's a miracle, Ava said, her voice nervous. They've never seen a recovery so fast. She's perfect. That's good. The silence between them stretched, filled with the ghosts of Leo, Somi, and Michael. I brought you something, Ava said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small framed photo. It was a close-up of Maya sleeping a tiny white onesie, unzipped just enough to show a thin, pink, perfectly healed scar down her chest. I don't, Lyra started, shaking her head. I know, Ava said quickly. It's not for you, it's for him, for Leo. So you know, his heart, it's happy, it's safe. Ava's voice cracked. I talk to her. About him, I'll tell her. When she's old enough. I'll make sure she knows. What he did. What you did. Lyra looked at this photo. She reached out her hand, trembling, and her finger traced the line of the scar on the glass. Our father, Ava said the word, awkward. He sends money. For her. A lot. I don't send it back. I put it in a college fund. It's all he knows how to do. Lyra nodded. That's all he's ever known. I hate you sometimes, Lyra confessed, her voice a small whisper. I know, Ava said, tears welling in her own eyes. I hate you too. The brutal honesty was the only thing that felt real. But sometimes, Ava whispered, I look at her when she's sleeping, and I'm just so grateful. I can't breathe. A small, tearful half-laugh escaped Lyra's lips. He was always taking my breath away, even before he was born. She looked at the empty space on the bench beside her. She looked at Ava. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Hesitantly, slowly, Ava pushed the stroller forward and sat down. Not close enough to touch, but on the same bench. Two sisters forged in tragedy, bound by a secret and a sacrifice. They sat in the fragile spring sunlight, not speaking, watching the ducks as the tiny, perfect heart that connected them beat strong and steady, beginning the long, impossible work of living. In the end, there was no victory, only survivors. Michael Harrison's secret, born in a moment of betrayal, finally came to light in a sacrifice that was never his to make. It was a choice made by a new generation, a choice to find grace in the midst of an impossible, unthinkable tragedy. Lyra and Ava, two sisters bound by a father's sin and a son's heart, must now learn to live with the ghosts of the past. What does it truly mean to forgive? And can a heart beating in a new chest ever truly mend a family that was broken from the very start? If this story touched you and made you think, please help our channel grow, click that like button. Share this video with someone who appreciates deep-seated family drama, and be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Your support lets us bring more stories like this to life. What would you have done in Lyra's place? Could you have made that choice? Let us know in the comments below.